"If I sing well, will you give me a meal?" asked 9-year-old Kesha Williams, clutching a broken guitar as she looked up at the producer Stars of America backstage in Los Angeles. The man, dressed in an expensive suit, laughed cruelly. "Girl, do you really think you're here to win anything? You're here to make the audience laugh." Kesha adjusted the loose strings of the instrument she had found in the trash 3 weeks earlier. At 9 years old, she already knew when someone was completely underestimating her. Unlike other times she had bowed her head, something whispered to her that this would be the last time she allowed herself to be treated like trash. "I understand perfectly, sir," she replied, her calm tone causing the producer to frown in unease. 2 hours earlier, Kesha had been sleeping under an awning when a group of production assistants, scouting for interesting characters, noticed her singing for coins. They assumed they had found someone to serve as comic relief for a special episode. "We'll put you at the end," the producer said, consulting his clipboard. "After all the talented kids have performed, you come on to balance the show." What the producer did not know was that Kesha had grown up observing, memorizing, and learning the ways of the world from the streets. She knew exactly why she had been brought there, and she also knew something that would remain hidden until the perfect moment. In the 3 years since losing the grandmother who raised her, Kesha had developed a keen ability to see through the masks adults wore, to detect intention and deception, and to turn disadvantage into preparation. Backstage at American Idol, other children were treated like little celebrities. Production assistants ran back and forth, offering gourmet snacks, bottled water, and even professional makeup services. Kesha remained seated on the cold floor, her broken guitar on her lap. When she tried to approach the snack table, a production assistant gently pushed her away. "Sorry, sweetie, these snacks are only for the official participants," the woman said, condescendingly. "Actually, I'm also performing," Kesha said calmly. The assistant's frown deepened. "Oh, yes, the special girl. You'll perform very last." Her tone was clear. This was not a compliment. The privileged children prepared for their spotlight moments. Richard Brennan, the producer, gave instructions to the group. "You are the future of American music. Sing with your heart, show off your perfect techniques, and make your families proud." Ashley, a 12-year-old with blonde hair and private lessons, noticed Kesha sitting alone. "Dad, why that girl here?" she asked. "Don't worry about it, princess," her father whispered. "She's here to serve as a contrast, so you can shine even brighter." Kesha heard every word, and for the first time in years, a pang of pure, controlled anger coursed through her. Her mind flashed back to the day she lost her grandmother, Dorothy, who had raised her and taught her the power of music as resistance. Dorothy used to say, "Kesha, when the world tries to diminish you, grow twice as big. When they try to silence you, sing 3 times as loud." Dorothy had been a gospel singer in a small Harlem church for over 40 years and had trained Kesha rigorously in music from a young age. She taught Kesha that music is a weapon against injustice. "They can take our homes, our money, our dignity, but they can never take away what God has put in our voices," she would say. After Dorothy died of cancer, Kesha lived on the streets, but she carried her grandmother's legacy in her heart and voice. "Hey, girl," Richard called, interrupting her memories. "Do you even know any songs? I hope you're not wasting our time." "I know a few," Kesha replied, strumming her guitar. Richard laughed. "Street music? Rap? Something you learned begging for change." The other children snickered. Kesha smiled, the same mysterious, faint smile she had used before. "Can I ask you a question, Mr. Richard?" "Go ahead," he said, slightly irritated. "Did you study music?" she asked innocently. Richard, offended, replied, "Of course I did. MBA in Entertainment Management from UCLA. And do you play any instruments?" Kesha asked, her eyes calculating. "I don't need to play to recognize talent when I see it," he snapped. Kesha filed away the information, mentally noting every detail, every flaw, every ego stroke. She was ready. Hidden in her torn backpack was a letter from her grandmother, Dorothy, with specific instructions. "Only open when you are ready to use everything I taught you. Show what you're capable of first. Don't ask for charity." The letter also revealed Dorothy's remarkable legacy. one of the first black women to graduate in music composition from Juilliard in the 1960s, and a mentor to James Mitchell, the current network executive. As Kesha readied herself backstage, Ashley approached with a group of other children. "My dad wants to know how you got in here. Did you lie on your application?" "I didn't lie about anything," Kesha replied calmly. Ashley scoffed. "So you think you can compete with us?" "I've trained at the Manhattan Conservatory for 6 years with private teachers who cost more per hour than you probably see in a month." The other children laughed, but Kesha simply tuned her guitar, testing each string with precision. She had spent years mastering her voice and instrument in subway tunnels, street corners, and noisy public spaces. Every cold night, every hungry day, every contemptuous look she had endured had been training for this moment. An older man observed from across the stage, gray-haired, wearing gold-rimmed glasses. Their eyes met, and Kesha felt a surge of recognition. The man approached. "May I have your full name?" "Kesha Dorothy Williams," she said deliberately, emphasizing her middle name. The man froze. Tears filled his eyes. He was James Mitchell, executive director of the network, and Dorothy had been his personal mentor. He had no idea she had family. "Where have you been all these years?" he asked softly. "On the streets," Kesha replied. "Since she died." James's mind raced. Dorothy had taught him that the best revenge against prejudice was undeniable excellence. Kesha was about to demonstrate exactly that. "Can I do you a favor?" James asked. "Actually," Kesha said, smiling faintly, "can I ask you a favor?" "Don't interfere. Let them do exactly what they planned to me. But record everything. The humiliation, the comments, the laughter. They think they know me, but they know nothing about the music in my veins, the strength I carry, or the years I've trained." James understood. He nodded. Richard reappeared, cruel smile on his face. "Hey, girl, your time to shine. Entertain us well." Kesha stood, adjusted her guitar, and walked toward the stage. Turning to James, she whispered, "My grandmother said God gives talents not only to elevate ourselves, but to elevate others. Today is not just about me." The lights blazed, the audience murmured, and Kesha stepped into the spotlight, ready to transform humiliation into triumph. The stage lights glared down on Kesha as she positioned her broken guitar, the strings slightly warped but ready. Her heart beat steadily. She introduced herself to the audience. "Hello, my name is Kesha Dorothy Williams. I'm 9 years old, and I want to dedicate this song to my grandmother, who taught me that music has no color or social class." Richard Brennan's eyes narrowed. Something about the name Dorothy Williams felt familiar, but he brushed it off. Smirking, he signaled his assistants to activate the sabotage sound system. A deafening hiss erupted from the speakers. The audience winced. Some covered their ears. A few laughed, assuming the fault lay with the little girl. Kesha didn't falter. She stepped away from a microphone and sang unamplified, letting her voice cut through the static. Every note rang with clarity and precision, each phrase a mixture of gospel intensity and classical technique. Years of performing in subway stations, city tunnels, and noisy street corners had trained her to maintain pitch, rhythm, and emotion under the harshest conditions. One by one, the audience became silent, mesmerized. Even seasoned musicians in the crowd sat up straighter. Richard shouted from the side, desperate, "Turn it off! Cut the broadcast!" It was too late. James Mitchell had already instructed his team to keep the cameras rolling, broadcasting live to millions. He watched intently, a mix of pride and relief washing over him. Kesha had transformed what was meant to be public humiliation into an undeniable display of talent. Her performance of Amazing Grace blended traditional gospel with subtle classical flourishes, each note carrying the weight of her struggle and the legacy of her grandmother. Tears formed in the eyes of some audience members. Backstage, Ashley and the other children were stunned into silence, their laughter and sneers frozen on their faces. When Kesha finished, there was a pause, 3 long seconds of stunned silence before the auditorium erupted in applause. Standing ovations shook the hall. Cameras captured every reaction, and social media buzz began instantly as viewers shared clips and screenshots. James Mitchell stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, holding the microphone with authority, I am James Mitchell, Executive Director of this network. And this extraordinary girl, Kesha Dorothy Williams, is a granddaughter of Dorothy Williams, one of the greatest gospel singers and songwriters in our country, a woman who graduated from Juilliard in the 1960s when it was nearly impossible for a black woman. Dorothy was also my mentor, guiding me through my career. I had no idea she had a granddaughter until today. Gasps and whispers spread through the audience. Richard Brennan's face turned pale. James continued, broadcasting the truth. Every cruel comment, every attempt at sabotage, and every act meant to humiliate Kesha had been recorded. "Richard Brennan, you are fired," he said, pointing directly at the producer. "Your career at this network ends now." Security escorted Richard offstage as boos and shouts of outrage filled the auditorium. Ashley and the other children, previously mocking Kesha, now faced their own reckoning. Ashamed, Ashley's parents withdrew her from the Manhattan Conservatory and enrolled her in a public school to learn humility and respect. Several of the other children cried quietly, realizing the impact of their cruelty. Meanwhile, Kesha's life changed dramatically. James created the Dorothy Williams program, offering full music scholarships to talented children from underprivileged communities. Kesha became the first beneficiary, receiving a scholarship to the prestigious Los Angeles Music Academy, a new home, and adoption by James and his wife Margaret, who had always hoped to have a child. Kesha never forgot her origins. She frequently visited shelters and underserved communities to discover new talent, guiding other children just as Dorothy had guided her. Within 6 months, she performed as a guest soloist with the New York Philharmonic at Carnegie Hall. Her performance, broadcast nationwide, raised over $5 million for the Dorothy Williams program and inspired countless families. At Carnegie Hall, Kesha dedicated the concert to her grandmother and to all children judged by their appearance, social status, or circumstance. She shared her journey. 3 years on the streets, surviving hunger, cold, and contempt, now culminating in recognition not just for talent, but for dignity, resilience, and courage. The audience wept openly, inspired by her story. Stars of America was overhauled. James implemented strict protocols, including child psychologists, social workers, and a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination or humiliation. Talent was to be recognized based on skill, heart, and potential, not social class, background, or privilege. Richard Brennan attempted several public apologies, but each interview reignited outrage. His career collapsed entirely. He eventually moved to a small town, working as a used car salesman, discovering the lasting consequences of cruelty and arrogance. 2 years later, Kesha, now 11, released her first album, Voices from the Street, blending classical and gospel influences learned from Dorothy. The album debuted at #1, earning a Grammy nomination. At the ceremony, Kesha wore a simple, elegant dress and carried a restored but marked guitar, the same instrument she had brought to the show, a symbol of her journey. "This guitar taught me that true strength comes not from what we have, but from what we do with what we have," she said. Ashley, having witnessed Kesha's rise, sent a handwritten letter apologizing for her past cruelty. Kesha responded graciously, eventually forming a genuine friendship, demonstrating that even deep wounds could become bridges when approached with sincerity. By age 13, Kesha split her time between music studies, mentoring young musicians and charity performances. She often told children she met, "Our gifts aren't just to elevate ourselves, they're to help others rise." Her story became a national lesson. Underestimating someone based on appearance, background, or circumstance comes at a high price. True talent waits patiently for opportunity. It rewrites rules, breaks boundaries, and proves that prejudice cannot contain greatness. Richard Brennan learned the harshest lesson: diminishing others only diminishes oneself. Kesha's triumph illustrated that true victory is not in defeating others, but in becoming so extraordinary that prejudice becomes irrelevant. The legacy of Dorothy Williams lived on through her granddaughter, and Kesha's story continues to inspire a generation of children to rise above adversity, turn injustice into opportunity, and let their voices be heard.